from my perspective, Chuck Schumer did not blow it. Nancy Pelosi did a little better than that. But what we really saw here, I mean, and I remember it was a Friday morning last week, and there were reports that there had been a shutdown at LaGuardia Airport. There were reports that there had been a shutdown at Miami Airport, that there was one in Philadelphia. We saw, flights were suspended for a period of time, and that was air traffic controllers basically saying we're short-staffed. We saw on that same day the flight attendants union come out and get right in the face of Mitch McConnell. We're not going to tolerate flying on flights that we don't think are safe. Started hearing stuff at the TSA of people, and I think it was essentially the grumblings, if you will, the nascent beginnings of a full-on work action by essentially workers around airlines that was the last straw. That was the big difference between Friday and any other day up to that point. And it just goes to show that, and I think this was an underplayed story in the media, frankly, for a lot of reasons. I think there is a lot of concern that if labor, if it starts to understand its power in our society, again, that it's going to cause a lot of problems for politicians and for moneyed interests. But I think that was the determining factor. I mean, I credit Schumer and Pelosi with not messing it up and with standing strong. But essentially, it was they may have been the brick wall, but it was labor that ended up being the hard place, right, or the rock, and coming down hard on them.
I agree, and I do think that shows that where the power lies on the part of the Democratic coalition if they learn from that and learn to leverage that power, which is people, their constituency actually taking action. I mean, you don't want it to be forced by something as painful as that 35-day shutdown. But nonetheless, the fact that workers flexed their muscle and said, we're not doing this. I mean, they obviously reached that. And we knew that the Republicans were concerned about this early on. You remember you and I talked about it, that there were people saying on the sly sort of, geez, it's going to take an airline, shutdown for this to stop, because Trump just wasn't listening to anybody. And I will go a little further in giving Pelosi credit, because I think that I read a number of stories that there was a lot of rumbling happening within the caucus about ending it earlier, and she really did hold the line and explain to them, which I think is one of the things that experience is useful for in these sort of situations, that, they'd been down this road before and they understood. And she said over and over again to them, look, the only way that we can end this is to hold out, and they will break, because that's what they do. And, I think that her experience in that situation and her ability to kind of explain the dynamics of this, because if you recall, and I think we talked about this too, Republicans are always blamed for the shutdown because it's always their fault. I mean, this goes back to the 90s when Newt was shutting down the thing. They're always the ones, and they're always standing up there pounding their chests about what they want, and they're not gonna give in, and they're not gonna, they're gonna force the Democrats to their knees and all this stuff. I mean, it's their own fault. But Pelosi, having been around a while, I think she understood that and was able to, convey that to her caucus. And it's not easy to do that. It really isn't. So I'm going to give her a little bit more credit there for having done that. But you're absolutely
fair enough.
Right.
I think that's right. And I will say, and you're not being glib when you say it's always their fault. And part of the reason why it is because of the way that they have trained their electorate to be hostile to government. So they can never be seen. They can never be in a position of even claiming that it's really the Democrats' fault. Right? They can say the Democrats are being obstructionists, or they're asking for too much, but they can't really complain about the government being shut down because it's sort of outside of their narrative. right? It begins to cut into a narrative that they've created for their constituency, which is government's not relevant anyways. Government's not a force for good. And so it's almost as if that they should be saying good. Look, all you need to do is listen to right-wing talk radio. Good, government shut down. Good, we're saving money, as Trump thinks that happens. And of course that doesn't. But I mean, I will give you that we certainly read about here and there about different centrist Democrats saying maybe we should negotiate, and then it just sort of disappeared, as if basically Pelosi called up the phone and said, "Stop it right now. We're going to win this." And then what we had at the beginning of the week was Mick Mulvaney coming out on Monday trying to pretend like Donald Trump is willing to close the government down again in 3 weeks if he doesn't get the wall. And literally by Wednesday, that was done. That was completely done. You started seeing the stories about, no one in the Republican Party wants to go even near a shutdown again. Not going to happen. Not going to be a wall. And I will say this too. Early on I had said I would take a deal for DACA and DAPA and the TPS folks to protect these immigrants who have come over here by no choice of their own with their parents as kids, or immigrants who have come here because they are fleeing either a political upheaval or a natural disaster in their homeland. Those two groups are protected for the moment anyways because of court cases. And I think Nancy Pelosi did the right thing because this is basically sending a message to Republicans. You never want to do this again, because if you do, you will feel pain. And you've just found out that we're not going to buckle under any circumstance. And so I think we may look back on this, knock on wood, this could be the last government shutdown that we see for a long time, or at least certainly, I don't know if we'll see one that even remotely as close to as long as this. All right, well, listen, the other thing that happened this week, and we need to take a break here, but when we come back, I want to talk about it. We talked about Howard Schultz at the beginning of the program, this former CEO of Starbucks, who has come out there and blessed us by telling us that he's contemplating running for president. And he's a billionaire, so we should all be excited. That's right. Maybe we will get a chance to line the streets and touch the back of his robe in some fashion. But the interesting thing was he immediately launched into attacks against Democrats. It was almost as if it was for granted that Donald Trump was a horrible human being, but he really attacked a series of Democratic proposals, running from Medicare for all to wealth tax that Elizabeth Warren proposed. When we come back, let's talk about some of the Democrats who have announced their candidacy and how they are doing. We're going to have to do this a lot because I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of them. We'll take a quick break. I'm Sam Seder. We'll be right back with the great Heather Parton, or you may know her as Digby. Right back on Ring of Fire Radio.